All right, good morning, everyone. And we are going to go ahead with our next session. So this is our career session, creating your dream career. So for this, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Nana Lee this morning. Nana holds a lot of positions and titles, which are all very impressive. This includes the position of director and assistant professor in the teaching stream of graduate professional development in both departments of biochemistry and immunology, director of mentorship and graduate professional development for research and graduate education in the Temerty Faculty of Medicine at the University of Toronto, and lead for equity, diversity, and inclusion. Dr. Lee has a lot of experience over her career in biotechnology industry and has initiated many different programs to help trainees and students in their career development. She's written a book titled Success After Graduate School, which covers everything from networking in graduate school, working on your CV to work-life balance. So I've taken Dr. Lee's program and courses, and it's absolutely benefited me and continues to help my progress through everything I do. So it's my pleasure again to welcome Dr. Lee here today. And with that, I'll pass things off to you to share your screen and go ahead with this session.
Morning, everyone. Thank you to BSI for your kind invitation. It's always fun being here. I love meeting everyone around the globe. So thank you for that. And maybe if everybody can write in the chat where they're writing from. Where are you all calling in from? I want to see where you are. What country, what city, just to see where everyone's at. From India, welcome. Boston, Turkey, Toronto, very nice. All over the world. Berkeley. I was just in California. New Haven. Wow, thank you. Cape Town, Calgary. Wow, everywhere. Awesome. Thanks for writing that in. I love to see where people are calling in from. Mexico. Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, so Robin, during the talk, it's hard for me to look at the chat and the Q&A, so if there are any questions, please let me know. I can stop and answering the questions along the way.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, if there are any questions, sorry, I forgot to mention, throw them in the Q&A and I will absolutely monitor those. So thanks very much for reminding that.
Yeah, no worries. Right, so my talk today is about creating your own dream career path. And I want to talk about this because people say, well, what's out there? Or what are the options out there? But really, if you're equipped with the tools and the education and your passion, what you want to do, you can really create your own dream career path. And how do we do that? So that's what we're going to delve into the next 90 minutes. So the course that I teach that Robin was talking about at the University of Toronto is called GPD, which is Graduate Professional Development. And it has been highlighted or featured in many of these magazines, journals, and various institutions for being a best practice in graduate professional development among graduate students. So I'm just going to bring you sort of the trailer today. And if you're interested in more, you can always write to me to inquire. So what I want to do now is I want to see, well, who's in the room. So I'm going to put something in the chat and it's going to be a link and I would like to see everyone there. And I know this is Zoom, but I want this to be as interactive as possible. Okay, and I'm going to share my screen of what you're supposed to be seeing when you get to this Google Doc. Share. Okay. You see that, Robin? Do you see the doc that I'm sharing?
Yep, right there.
Okay. So if you can go in and fill in your name, the city, the country, your preferred pronoun if you want to share, and your current position. So if you're a high school student, a grad student, undergrad, postdoc, working professional, mid-career, later career, close to retirement, wherever you are, that would be the current position. And then column G is going to be, where would you like to be in 3 to 5 years? So looking forward. It doesn't have to be a title. If you're not sure what it's going to be, then you can just leave it as, oh, I would like to be doing some research in industry or academia or government, but you don't even have to say where. You can just kind of say what you hope to be doing. And then if you stop at column G, we're just going to stop at column G. I know for those that are like texting and stuff, you might want to go ahead, but just stop at column G right now. I just want to get a sense of who's in the room. Almost graduated. Congrats, Robbie, in your last lap. And this sheet is going to help you network within the 90 minutes. I want to build a community and I want you to be able to help each other. So it would be great if you can participate so that we can help each other find your own mentors, find your own career path, and finding the people that would be instrumental in maybe potentially becoming a mentor in the future. Okay, so we have people saying 3 to 5 years, completed PhD in a lab somewhere, teaching, doing research, graduate or medical school, postdoc, high achievers. I'll just wait until I have a few people that have completed columns A through G. If for some reason you can't access the Google Doc, you can put your information in the chat and we can see you. And Robin, if anyone puts their information in the chat, if you can just copy and paste into the doc, that would be great.
Will do.
Thank you. Thank you for participating. The more people we have in there, the more people we can help. So that would be great. Well, like Dr. Fish is creating network of scholars and mentors. That's what she's famous for, right, Eleanor? Who graduated starting a company. It looks like some people have already filled in H. So if you want to do that, you can do that as well. How did you find a current mentor? That's going to be a little bit later on in the talk, but you can fill that out as well if you're waiting for others. And I'll just give everybody one more minute to fill out column A through G. It's a bright sunny day here in Toronto. That's how you see the sun streaming down my window. Nick wants to be a successful veterinarian. Awesome. Orthopedic surgeon, internal medicine. It's a pleasure surrounded by smart, goal-oriented people. Thanks for attending BSI. Okay. All right, so as you finish sort of the last couple words in there, I'm going to continue on with the slides, and we're going to come back to that a little bit later. This is a interactive session. Go back to my slides. Right, so the course that I teach, we talk about the 3 steps of creating your career path. Now, the first step in any sort of finding where you want to go is looking within yourself. So that's a reflection piece. So you have to reflect on your skills. What are you good at? Your interests. What are you interested in? Because without curiosity, you're not going to get to that career. And then also your values. What do you value about? Not just about in the science, but also in life. And so the tools that we use is called the Individual Development Plan to reflect on that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. The second step is meaningful engagement. So now that you've reflected on what your skills, interests, and values are, and what you like to do, what you're good at, and what you care about in this world, you want to create what I call meaningful engagements. Okay? And these are what I call tests or prototypes of the actual career that you're thinking of. So for example, if you want to become a veterinarian, chances are in high school or as an undergrad, you may have volunteered with a vet's office. So that's sort of like a prototype of what it might be to be a veterinarian. If you are going off to medicine, you may have volunteered at a hospital. If you want to do research in, say, the biotech industry, you may have had an internship in the biotech industry. Okay, so that's what we call meaningful engagements. And another term is wayfinding. And then the third step is storytelling. So that's marketing what you've done. So you've reflected, you engaged meaningfully with your environment, but then you have to effectively market that. So during networking, conferences, your job applications, all these things, emails that you write are telling your stories and marketing yourself. Okay, so those are the 3 steps, and it's not 1, 2, 3 and you're done. It's 1, 2, 3 and you go back to all these things every time. You revisit your reflection probably once a year because you change, you grow. You're not going to be the same person that you were 5 years ago. And so your meaningful engagements are going to change. So it's an iterative process that happens throughout your life. So the individual development plan for most scientists is going to be from Science Careers. So if you log on to Science Careers, in the middle of the page, there is an individual development plan. It takes about 15, 20 minutes to fill out. And it's a really good assessment tool on finding what skills you want to improve on, what are your values, what are your interests. And then it gives you a sort of a match with your career options out there. Whether that is research and development, whether that is intellectual property, whether it's science communication, and it gives you that match. Having said that, if the match says 95% Robin to become an application scientist, it doesn't mean Robin is going to say, ooh, that's what I'm going to be doing, right? You don't have to really look at the numbers. It's just an idea of what options are out there. For those of you that are in the social sciences, or humanities, there's another tool called imaginephd.com. And that tool does the same thing for the social sciences and humanities as for sciences as well. But I think most of you will be on the Science Careers one. And if you have any questions about that, also feel free to email me as well. But I'm not going to go too far into it. It's a really good tool to reflect on your own path. So this whole concept of wayfinding, or how do you find these meaningful engagements to do? Because there's so many options out there. How do you do that? So what you want to be doing is you want to be in the middle here, what I call the purpose compass. Okay. So what's the middle? What are these 3 circles? The blue circle is what you love to do. What makes you feel alive? What do you like to do in your free time? Those are the activities that you love to do. And then the other activities that you want to list is, what are you good at? So your strengths and skills. What would you like to become good at? So if you're a PhD program in biochemistry, you might say, oh, I would love to become a really good X-ray crystallographer. So that's what you hope to become good at. Or if someone has told you, hey, you're a really good leader. You can organize people together. You can build a community like Dr. Fish, right? That's what she's good at. That's her strength and skill. Now, what do you care about? right? If you can do what you love and do what you're good at, but if you don't care about it, then you're not going to be really fulfilled in that career. So what do you care about? What problems do you feel moved by? So you want to think about your family, the community, the country, the wider world. And then your career in the future should be intersecting all these things. So you want to, and also the fourth circle is that you can be paid for it, right? So you want to be able to afford everything else that you need to buy in life. But as a student, when you're cultivating your purpose compass or wayfinding, it's easy to join student groups or volunteer a little couple hours here and there to build your portfolio. So as a student, you don't want to just make minimum requirements. That you can do, but you want to make sure that you're building your portfolio as well as your transcripts and your requirements and all the things that the school is asking for you to do. So I'll give you an example. One student takes a course which has 500 students in it, and she aces the class. She does well on the tests, so she gets an A+ in the course. That's student A. Now there's student B. And student B says, I'm really interested in this course, and this is a first-year course. There's 500 students in it, but I'm really keen on the subject matter. And let's say this class is psychology. And I really want to write an article about the stress response and first-year undergrads. So she writes an article, and for the article, she wants to interview her professor, her psychology professor that's teaching 500 other students. She manages the time, she meets up with a professor and writes an article in the student newspaper. And the professor during the conversation realizes she's really interested in this subject matter and says, hey, I really like what you're doing. You have really good writing skills. How would you like to be my research assistant for the summer? She does well in the course and she gets her A+ as well. So the difference between student A and B is that student A did what is required, got her A+. Student B is now did what was required, but she engaged meaningfully with what was interesting to her and talking to people, the professor. So now she has this prototype, as I say, about what it's like to be in research in psychology. So that's a difference with those that design or create their career path. So how do you actually do this? What we want to do is this, if this was a workshop in person, I would have a bunch of Post-its and a bunch of sticky notes. And for each of these categories, we would brainstorm. Okay, what is it you like to do, what you're good at, and what you care about. And then we go ahead and make these trios. Okay, and these concepts were taken from the Stanford Design School that I attended a couple years ago. And then we make these trios, and then we come up with ideas with these trios. So for example, this student said, well, I really care about science outreach. My strength is that I'm an organized leader. People have told me that I'm a leader, I'm organized, I can do that. And I love to write. So now you're taking all these things that are pertinent to you and coming up with prototypes. So one prototype that her team came up with, I could start a blog with some science friends to write about science for the general public. So this encompasses everything that's in this trio. So whether the student goes on to become a professor, a science communicator, in our research and development and industry, communication is a key skill that is required. And when they ask for it, she has something on her resume, but also her experience. And she really wanted to do this. So this is how she's prototyping no matter what career she goes to. And when people say, oh, do that because it looks great on your CV or looks great on your resume, I really do not like that expression. You want to do things that's on your resume because you actually care about it. And it really comes to light when I'm reviewing resumes. I can tell if you did something because it was just something to put on there and something that you really cared about, because there's a story behind it. There's going to be a meaningful story that you're going to tell, which I'll talk about a little bit later, on your resume, and you can really tell the difference from that. Okay, so in the chat, since we talked about meaningful engagements, what would be a meaningful engagement if you're preparing your career for academia? So what are the prototypes that students do during their undergrad or grad studies that can be a prototype to become an academic professor? Let's see, in chat. What do you do as a student? Make yourself available as a TA. Yes. Act as a mentor to high school students or peers. Very good. Advanced reading courses and summer undergraduate research opportunities. Yeah, the research. Thank you, Stefan. Research assistant, internship in the lab or research institute, offer to volunteer in a lab. Very good. So next, what if you are in a lab? Let's say you are a PhD student or a master's student and you're in a lab. What else can you be doing that's inherently part of the program that really is a meaningful engagement for an academic position? Join BSI, yes. Engage with the department. Right, so student groups. If you find there's something lacking in your department, instead of complaining about it, take the initiative and create something about it. Right? I had some students that say, hey, we don't have a group on the financial aspects of becoming a grad student. Can we do that? Something like that. Mentor junior group members. And what do you need in academia? What is the currency in academia? Papers, that's right. Publications is the currency in academia. So writing those papers, figuring out how to write those papers, your first grant, how do you write your grant as a student? All these things are sort of these prototypes of what it's like to become a professor. So these prototypes, if you're going off into academia, is really within your curriculum. And the only thing that you have to kind of reach outside of the curriculum are things like perhaps networking, conflict management, equity, diversity, inclusion skills, wellness, all these things that are not inherently ingrained in the curriculum, you're going to have to find elsewhere. Okay. Teaching students about science and life as well. Very good. I like that one. Okay, so then in the chat, what about a career that's not in academia? And I took just an example here of medical affairs. So medical affairs is a career of communicating the pharma industry to the rest of the world, such as healthcare practitioners, doctors, nurses, patients. What kind of engagements could you be involved with if you want to do something like this? Let's see in the chat. Patient care, reaching out to people in the field on LinkedIn, very nice. That brings up to the concept of informational interviews. What else? If they're involved in communications, what can you be doing in grad school to develop that? Clinical trials. Might want to shadow somebody in clinical trials because it's going to be hard to find an internship in that one. But think about what you're already doing. Volunteer work, what you're already doing within your curriculum that can help you in science communication. Pharmaceutical products. Yeah, so if this is a career in science communication, anything that you do, that's the same thing that we just talked about in terms of communicating your science is very important. Publications, conference presentations, writing a grant, writing an abstract. All those things are also prototypes for a medical affairs career, building a network. The only thing different that might be missing that you might want to include are what BSI just mentioned are finding mentors in this industry, or finding people that have already done this and asking them how did they get there with an academic background. So let's take a look at a real life example. Here is the life of Charlie. So Charlie, let's start at the right-hand side here. 2019, Charlie is an assistant professor. Charlie didn't wake up one morning and say, hey, I'm an assistant professor now. There were steps to get there, meaningful engagements to get there. So a year before, Charlie did her practice talks and interviews. And before that, during her postdoc, she did workshops on lab and budget management. She did networking with industry partners to find alternative funding sources. Attended leadership and equity, diversity, inclusion workshops, because many academic positions now ask for a diversity statement. What is your diversity statement? And also, it's just something that everyone should be aware of. It's a core competency. And then before that, she was in science outreach groups. She was in a postdoctoral fellowship group. And then before that, she was consistently publishing, presenting, building a network, collaborating at conferences, defended her PhD after she started her postdoc in Boston. And then before that, as a graduate student, she was a mentor of communications, a teaching assistant, and also took Bachelor of Professional Development. So she knew kind of what she needed to do. So this is sort of a timeline. As you can see, there are tons of other things that you have to do, what I call meaningful engagements, toward that career goal. And then Charlie is going to continuously build on top of this. Right? It doesn't stop here. There's promotions to think about, activities she may be involved with, head of committees, and it's just continuing on through life. Okay, so let's take a case of Unji. Unji's life, she went from science to pharma. So if we look at where she is now, she's a medical science liaison in a pharma company, and she also came back to defend her PhD thesis. So if you do it right, if you plan, if you plan a little bit, then you'd be able to go start your career and then come back to defend. But before she was an MSL, well, you can't just kind of, again, start as a student, then join MSL the next day. So during her last couple of years of a PhD, she published her 3 publications, but she also did an internship at one pharma company in health economics and reimbursement. And how did she do that? Well, before her internship, she took workshops and to understand case studies, understanding health and regulatory. And then she took another workshop, understanding pharma and the market landscape. So it's just she was interested in this field, so she took these workshops. Before that, she was in various executive student groups. She chaired various leadership conferences in student development and also took GPD. So again, it was in her initial years, and she wasn't quite sure where she wanted to go. She did a bunch of informational interviews, and then she realized this is where she wanted to focus on. So about 1.5 years, 2 years before she graduated, she had all these various prototypes in her portfolio. It's not to say if you're just about to graduate, you don't feel like, oh, I don't have what Unji has, but you can start this at any time, prototyping your future career. Any questions thus far? Robin, do we have any questions? We're good?
There's nothing in the Q&A, and I'm keeping my eye on the chat. So you're all good for now, yes.
Great. I like to pause. Let's know. Okay, and then BSI chatted about the informational interview. So who among our audience has actually done an informational interview? If you can just say yes in the chat. You've done one. While I'm waiting, I'm going to move my desk because the sun is in my eyes. Hold on a second. All right, that's better. All right, so a few of you have done an informational interview. Okay, so let's hear from Aaliyah. Aaliyah, do you want to share your experience? What was the informational interview and what did you learn from it?
Sure. I have done a lot of sort of cold emailing and just finding people online who are essentially doing what I want to do and who I want to be when I grow up. And so just reaching out to ask questions about their experience, any advice that they have or things that they wish they did differently. Sorry if you can hear that, my mom is texting me, but that's essentially what I've been doing and I found it to be really helpful.
Okay. And then for those that haven't done an informational interview, maybe let's talk to Linda. Linda, what sort of advice would you give for someone that did not have an informational interview and they're kind of nervous about it? Want to share? Linda, are you out there?
1 second. Sorry, she might be a participant, but we could try to enable her audio.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Hi, Linda. Feel free to go ahead if you're willing and able. Maybe not. Linda seems to have
Maybe she doesn't
disappeared.
have audio. So BSI, who's the name behind BSI?
Oh, it's me, Robbie.
Oh, Robbie. Okay, you want to tell us about your experience?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess for someone who hasn't experienced one, it's very easy to just be nervous and kind of let that be your stopping point. But I think you have to kind of, you know, take the leap forward and don't be afraid to email or message that person on LinkedIn that you're interested in talking to.
Yeah, thank you. It looks like some of you have done one. So for those of you that haven't done one, it's basically you're finding somebody on LinkedIn or otherwise and asking them, I want to know how you got there. And people say, well, I really don't want to bother people. Why would they talk to me? I'm just a student. Okay, so think about it this way. Let's say you're an established senior student on campus and a first year comes up to you and says, excuse me, Payam, I'm kind of lost. Can you tell me where Hart House is? And Payam, because he's a nice guy, will say, yeah, it's over there, and tell him directions. And Payam is not expecting anything back. Payam is not expecting money or a coffee or anything back from the student, complete stranger, but he's helping the student out. And afterwards, Payam feels good about it. I helped out somebody. So when you're asking informational interviews or asking for help, don't think about, oh, you are infringing on their time. Think about is that you stopped and you're asking for directions in life. And for those people that are willing to give back, they will give back, especially if you find somebody in your own alma mater or someone that's from your own department or someone that there's already a connection. Almost everybody will respond back to you. And if they don't, that's okay, because you have other people to talk to. And then reaching out usually is through LinkedIn. We also have, in North America, we have something called 10,000 Coffees. In your country, maybe something different, but there are mentorship platforms that you can reach out to. And the questions that you ask should be well researched. So it shouldn't be, well, what is medical affairs? It should be, you've already read about medical affairs and you want to know specific questions about that. And then there's a follow-up, right? So let's say Justin had an informational interview and it went really well. And how does Justin maintain that relationship? Like, what can you do? Justin had an informational interview with Payam and it went really well. How would Justin keep in touch? Any ideas? In the chat. How can you maintain? Yeah, email after to say thank you. So within 24 hours, I mean 24 hours because if you wait too long, they're going to forget it, right? So within 24 hours, you're going to email or send them a message on LinkedIn, such as Payam wrote. And Robin, thank you. And to say thank you for your time and the advice that you gave today. But to be more specific, you want to say points 1, 2, and 3. What was your takeaway after your interaction? And what are your next action items? So if someone had the information review and you asked, well, I want to get into this career, what's your best advice? And they told you, let's say, about a workshop, for example, or an organization that you can join. And let's say in a couple months, you do that workshop, you join the organization, and now you're involved with this community that you never knew existed, right? So a couple months later, you need to update that. Okay, Justin's going to say, hey, Payam, thanks for that. I didn't know this organization existed. Now I've joined. I have these many people in my community, and they're really helping me out with my career path. IM would love to hear that. So that's what you want to update them every 4, 5, 6 months, just to, hey, this is my update. And then if you have more questions, you can ask more questions. And you're not going to do this with everybody, but just with some people that you felt that connection with, right? That you felt, wow, that was a really good, positive experience. And they would want to know what I've been up to. The other critical thing in informational interviews, the last question that you're going to ask is, the magic question is, hi, is there anyone else in your network that you think I can speak to, or you think I should reach out to? And why you ask that question is that you have this person that you thought was really interesting, that's in your career path, perhaps. Now they're going to open up their network to you, but it's going to be very specific to your needs. So they're going to say, oh yeah, Justin like this, this, and this, and he's involved with this. So I'm going to reach out. Oh yeah, here's a name you should talk to. And then after a few of those, your network is going to be closer and closer to where you want to go. So that's the $1 million question to ask at the very end. Who else can I reach out to that's in your network? And follow up every 4 to 6 months on what you're doing. Keep it brief, and just, they would love to hear that. All right. Now, there's this concept of mentorship we talk about, and I want everyone here to be mentee-driven, to be involved in a mentee-driven mentorship. And what does that mean? It means you are taking control of your own life. Okay, so just like how you're going to go out and find the people that you want to find, and you're going to go out and ask people what you need help with, this is what you're going to be doing. And the tools that I talked about, the individual development plan for science careers, it's a great tool to do that. So let's say you take that skill assessment and you find that, oh, I'm not really good at, let's say, presentations. You're going to take your individual development plan to your mentor, someone that you talked to for several years or even just met, and say, I took the IDP and it says that, well, I have found that I've rated myself low on giving presentations. How can I help? How can I improve that? So now you're going to your mentor with a specific skill that you have determined and you have identified by taking this assessment. And now you're asking them a specific question, as opposed to, oh, let's meet up for coffee, tell me everything you know. That's not a very specific mentorship meeting. It should be what you want to be doing and what you want to improve on. And sometimes it could be just a chat, but most of the time there should be an action item on the table. I identified I need to work on communications. What do you recommend? Or I want to give a practice talk to you. Can you comment on my practice talk? Okay. So this is the mentee-driven mentorship part, and I want everyone to have the ability to do that. So I actually was a mentor for Top 20 Under 20 in Canada, and my student was a 17-year-old high school student. And every month she had an agenda. So she would say, today I want to go over my abstract. Today I want to go over career options. Today I want to go over this scholarship application that I'm writing. And there was an essay. I would just like for you to look at it and see what you think. So have that, and then you're taking your own skill development in your own hands. So here I've kind of, so we've talked about these meaningful engagements and the skills you want to be working on. This is a typical PhD program of 5 years, and it can go towards anything. It can be the next 5 years of your life now, or it can be for your master's and beyond. But it's essentially like a 5-year plan of your skills development through the curriculum, no matter what career that you're going to venture into. Okay, so here on the left-hand side, I have the skills. So planning for career in research, writing, presentation, teaching, and interpersonal communication. And what I've had in these ovals are things that are already ingrained in the curriculum. So it's not like you need to do anything extra, but what's already ingrained in the curriculum or that's offered by the university that you're at that you can take advantage of. Okay, so in your first year, some universities, it's about choosing your lab. Okay. So for that, you kind of have to plan your life for the next 3 to 5 years. Career exposure, you should know, okay, what can I get with a master's? What can I do with a PhD? And so that is what you're talking about in the first year. And then the green ovals are the individual development plans. So revisiting every year. If there's a shift in your career plans, maybe twice a year. But the writing bit, right? The prototypes of writing in your first year, you're going to be applying for scholarships. You're going to be doing your transfer proposals probably in the second year, and your third year, your first paper. So you don't have to go outside of your curriculum to work on it. It's just ingrained in the curriculum. The only thing that you might have to kind of leave out is this interpersonal communication part. So the whole networking, conflict resolution training, any sort of what I call core competency skills, emotional intelligence, unconscious bias training, all these things is you kind of have to seek on your own, perhaps, unless your school has an intro to these courses for grad studies. So I'll give an example. You know, in business school, in the first week, people they talk about networking, like how do you find the network and how do you build your network and community. And then in science school, we say, oh, here's a pipette, off you go. But at the end of the day, you still have to find a job after all this, right? So if you don't think your school is providing that optimal networking, then create your own, find a way to do that and create your own initiative. But that's just sort of how we're developing your skills throughout the curriculum and sort of the add-ons to become sort of that science thought leader at the end of your PhD. Okay, so we talked a bit about informational interviews and mentorship and networking. So we're going to go back to our sheet and we're going to help our own community right now we're going to share the power and the network of the room. Now, if we were in a room together, we would call this the fishbowl experiment. Thank you, Robin. So if you can go to that Google Doc again. Okay, and if you want to fill out everything up until column K. So how did you find your current mentor? What is your top advice in creating your own opportunities? And who would you like to have an informational interview with? So it can be, doesn't have to be a particular name. It can be a company, it can be somebody in a particular industry, just like a general title or a general description of what sort of person you would like to have an informational interview with. And I'll just wait until people have filled out column K. Then, let's see, while people are doing that, I know some people have been sitting here since this morning. So let's share some music.
First time I ever saw you, I fell in love when you entered the room. And when the light hit your face, we were just kids, but I knew right away that I will be with you until I stop breathing. I will keep loving you as long as my heart's beating. Oh, hold me close, promise you won't let go. I'm nothing without you, I don't know what I would do without you. You are the one I choose.
And for those of you that wrote a potential mentor, if you could write a little bit more specific, what type of mentor? A mentor or a mentor who can ask questions about woman mentor, male mentor, mentor who has children, mentor, you know, who is in the country.
I know that I will be with you the rest of my life. I will be with you until I stop breathing.
And for those of you that have finished column K, if you can write column L from your suggestion. So if somebody has wrote PhD program outside of academia, you don't have to write it. You can write specific names or you can write names. or write to me this email if you want to leave your suggestion there. And if you can work in groups of, say, groups of 5. So 1 through 5 work together, 10 work together, 11 through 3, so something like that. So we'll do groups of 5. Peer suggestion, Piam. We have a peer suggestion. I think Piam is in a career panel later on today, so I'm sure it'll be very helpful there. Yeah. Just wait until I see someone has written me as who would you like to have informational interview with? If you would like one, you can contact me after the conference and at nana.lee@utoronto.ca. I'll leave my email in the chat and I'll be happy to host an informational interview with you as well. Okay, nice. So if you leave your who would you like to have an information interview with, and I'll leave this sheet up for throughout the weekend. And also throughout this session, if you go to questions for Dr. Lee on column O, hopefully I'll be able to answer all of them during the session. But if you wanted a written answer as well, I can provide a written answer. If you have the question by tonight, then tomorrow night I'll have the answer with you in the block on column B. Okay, and then throughout the conference, if you feel like, oh, I know somebody that I can help somebody with, feel free to put under peer suggestions. But most of these, it looks like everyone's gonna be on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a valuable resource on searching with keywords, searching for countries, searching with departments, and all these wonderful qualities that you're looking for, definitely find them on LinkedIn. So I'm just going to leave that up for the entire weekend for people to come and refer back to. Let's go back to my slides. Buttons everywhere. Okay. Well, now we're at the section of storytelling. How do you strategically tell the world who you are all about? And so we just talked about LinkedIn. It's a very powerful tool. It's a global tool, connects all professionals together, and you should have a very professional profile. If you want to see an example of really good profiles, look at the profiles of your mentors that you see here at BSI. And also somebody from your own department that may have gone on to careers that you want to go on to. And look up their LinkedIn profiles, see what has worked for them. And what I have found students tell me is that the LinkedIn profile also helps them realize, oh, this is what they did to get to where they are. So sort of like the map that we did before in this talk, how did Charlie get there? Well, see all the things that she did before she got there. And that helps them figure out, oh, maybe I should start out there as well. What are the organizations they started with? Step 2 is to have a business card. So what do I mean by that? Everyone here should have an electronic signature. Now in the world of virtual everything, when you write an email to anyone, you should have a signature at the end of your email. Basically, what should be on your business card. So for Robin, it may be her name and then the title. So as a graduate student, what is your title? It's going to be either MSc researcher, PhD researcher, postdoctoral fellow. That is your title. And then under that, you're going to have another title if you think that's warranted. That is, if you are, let's say you're involved with a student council, or you're the coach of a Little League baseball team, or you are a community leader in your community center, or you started a nonprofit, or something that where you have another title, then you can put that as well. So I wouldn't say more than 2 titles. You can have MSc researcher, and then under that it could be student council lead. And then under that, you're going to have the physical address. So if I were to write a letter to Isabel, where should it go to? The lab room number, the street address, the city, the postal code, everything that needs for that letter to get to. And then also after your title of MSc researcher, you can have in the lab of Dr. Eleanor Fish, and then you're going to put a URL hyperlink to Dr. Fish's lab so that people know, oh, this is the research that she's doing and this is the lab that they're from. So that gives them extra information on what work you're working on. And then under your physical address, you're going to have your phone number. That's your lab phone number, not your cell. Unless you're actively searching for jobs and you want people to call them on your cell, so that your cell number is going to be, your phone number may be different for each email you sent out. Your email address and your LinkedIn URL. Okay, so those are all the things that need to be included in your email signature. So you are a professional. Don't say, oh, I'm just a student. No one is just a. You are a professional. And this is what you need to be doing in your professional emails, as you write them in a very succinct manner. Professional emails, definitely tell people why you're writing in the subject line, and you need to just get to the point right away. There's no need for intros because you have the email signature already on who you are. I am writing to request an informational interview. I found your career pathway to be inspiring on LinkedIn, something like that. Networking, you need to kind of have that 30-second pitch, or even shorter than that. If someone's asking, hey, what are you doing? You should be able to know what your research is on, who are you? Like in 10, 15, 30 seconds, whatever, how much time you have. And depending on your audience, it's going to be different. So the best way to think about is how you're going to say who you are in a group of people. So I can, write off all, I can just say all my titles, but that doesn't really mean anything. So the best way to introduce yourself, first of all, is to put a little space in between your first name and last name so people actually remember you. Because if I say, hi, I'm Nana Lee from University of Toronto, people may not remember that. But if I say, hello, I'm Nana Lee from the University of Toronto, there's a slight pause there. So people will actually remember that a little bit better. There's actually a huge TED Talk on this as well. The other thing is have, when you're introducing yourself, instead of saying the title, think about, well, who are you helping? And what are you helping them with? Especially when you're in a networking setting where you may have scientists that are from all over, or even business people. And they're not going to know the difference between a T cell or a B cell. I know, how could they not? But it's knowing how to market yourself that way. So for me, I'm going to say, I help empower students to realize their dream careers. And they're going to say, oh, how do you do that? Because now I'm telling them what I'm helping with and who I'm helping with, and people are interested in that. But if I tell people I'm director of graduate professional development, that doesn't mean much. So that's the way you want to find a short clip of how you introduce yourself, so it is meaningful. And then the icing on the cake is your resume. is how do you portray yourself to the rest of the world? You've done all this reflecting, you've had these meaningful engagements, you have these mentors, you have this brilliant portfolio of everything you've done. And how do you effectively tell your story on your resume? So a question to everyone here, what is the difference between a CV and a resume? Okay, write in the chat. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, you're all good.
Okay. CV is much longer. Resume highlights skill is more succinct. Oh, Isabel, I didn't see your chat. Were you talking about instructions for the sheet? You can write in the chat. You okay? Oh, it's okay. All right. Yeah, resume is 1 to 2 pages, where CV is everything you've ever done. CV is descriptive and resume is brief. Okay. So yes, so CV, you're all used to what a CV is because you all got here as in academia. So it's everything you've ever done. It could be 70 pages long. I'm sure many faculty members have very, very long CVs. It's everything. A resume, as people have mentioned, is very succinct, to the point of the job that you're applying for. So many industries ask for a resume, and it can be 1 to 2 pages. It is 1 page for 10 years of experience. So most of you will probably have a 1-page resume. So then, since everybody kind of knows what to write in a CV, I'm going to jump into the resume bit. And you can actually take some of these tips on the resume and also incorporate into a CV if you want to make it stand out. So effective resumes tell stories. And how do you tell these stories? Now, the acronym that I use that people remember is a CAR. What does a CAR have to do with a resume? So the CAR stands for challenge or context, A is action, and R is results. So let's show an example. So I asked a student, I said, okay, tell me about an experience you've had on campus while you were a student that you really want to tell the story to your employers, potential employer. And this is the story that they told me. So I gave a first ever TED Talk. I gave a TED Talk. I said, well, how did you do that? Well, I researched social organizations on the campus. And I looked at publications on NPOs. I organized a working group, implemented feedback, and then practiced my talk with them several times. I gave a talk, and with follow-up conversations, I learned that several students had started their own groups around social innovation and nonprofit ideas. I said, well, that's a really good story. But you can't really say this entire monologue if you only have 1 page, right? So this is where you have to really read the job description. So read the job description and figure out what they're asking for. So with this particular job, they're asking applicants to be able to motivate people. Now, if they were asking about presentation skills, the student can very well talk about presentation skills. They presented it at a TED Talk. But the core competency skills that the student wanted to highlight was a verb motivate. They wanted to say, hey, you know, I gave this talk and these other groups just cropped up, which I totally agree with, right? So then how do you write the story in a way that highlights this verb that's part of the job description? Again, your resume has to match the job description so that it is compelling, it tells your story. So here it is in a CAR format. The context or challenge was to engage youth in their own advocacy. So that was the why. That was the why the student did this. The action they took was they developed and presented a TED U of T talk. Okay? And then what was the result? Resulting in 5 student groups to be inspired to start their own advocacy programs. So now you're taking a huge memory, a huge experience, and then making it into a succinct statement that you can put on your resume that really highlights the verb motivate. So when you're telling your story, you have to talk about, well, what have you done that's unique or special? What skill do you want to highlight that matches what the job is asking for? What are the concrete actions you took to achieve that outcome, and what was your impact? And always check for your CAR linkage, because I find that students know exactly what to write for action. Right? They organized this, they spearheaded this, they led this, but they don't really put in the results or the context of why they did what they did. So here what we're used to on the left-hand side is your experiments, all your technical skills, your publication list, your public speaking experience. We listed on the CV. And on the right-hand side are some examples of a CAR statement. The first one is a science CAR statement. And I've highlighted in blue the challenge or context, and the action is in black, and the results are in green. And this particular student wrote all these numbers down because they were asking for high throughput experience. So what was the challenge? To map a disease susceptibility gene. So you kind of have to take a step back and ask yourself, okay, why did I do this master's project? Why did I do this PhD project? And what was the actions you took? Led the genomic screening of a candidate gene with how many primers, processing 3,000 PCR reactions a day. And again, that's because they were asking for high throughput experience. And then, what was the result? Resulting in the elucidation of that mutation and a publication. So this is a project that spanned probably a year and a half, and now it's distilled succinctly down into one CAR statement. So this is how you can fit all your experiences on one page, because you're making these little segments, little stories that really impact that really tell your impact. So I'm going to show you an example, some sample resumes and cover letters. And if there are any questions about CARs, please let me know. Okay. So here's a sample resume. So you've got to write your first and last name, your email address, your phone number, and your LinkedIn URL at the top. You don't have to draw on these lines, but I find these lines to be nice. It partitions out different sections. That's just my preference. You don't have to put in a different color here, but I find that it stands out. It pops a little bit if you have like blues or greens with your names, and definitely have a bigger font for your name so it pops out as well. The first thing you want to write at the top is what we call an objective statement, which is very different from a summary of your skills and qualifications. It's why you're applying for this company, what you're bringing to this company. Now, many students, I've seen them write seeking a job in the biotech industry. That's not going to bring your resume to the top, because so is everybody else that's applying for this job. Okay, so the objective is, an example would be offering 5 years of research experience. And if it's for a specific type of research, you can even replace that with whatever research that they're looking into. Right? So 5 years of immunology experience, of molecular genetics experience, that could be specific to that role, to that company. Communication and leadership skills, because that's what they asked for in the job description. And you have to demonstrate with your CAR statements that you do have communication and leadership skills. And don't forget these core competencies either. Some people think, oh, I've got the technical skills, I'm going to apply, but you also have to have these core competency skills. And to what position? To the position of application scientist at company X. Because this company X may have many different positions available, and you want to tell them you're applying for this application scientist position. And this is the kicker here is why? What do you want to do for them? To help strengthen the R&D mission of utilizing nanoparticles in cancer immunotherapy for product A, B, and C. So it's very specific to that company. And as soon as someone reads this, they're going to know, hey, they did their research. We want to read. So you only have about 6 to 12 seconds to make that first impression on your resume. And if you have an objective statement that is very specific to their company, you're going to catch their attention. So at the very top is going to be experience. Now, in this particular job, it's for a research and development scientist position. So you're going to have all of your research experience probably at the top, and here's candidate PhD researcher, the dates on the right-hand side, and then the CAR statements that we talked about. So a general rule of thumb is per publication, you should have at least one CAR statement. If you're one of those students that you publish prolifically and you have, say 15 papers, then you're going to have to group those papers into themes and figure out how are you going to tell the story of those papers so that it resonates in a succinct way, as opposed to writing a CAR for each of those 15 papers. Then also include, if you say, you have communication and leadership skills, well, what are those activities or the meaningful engagements that we talked about that helped you become a communicator and a leader? So for this one, the student wrote the teaching assistant experience. And this is another CAR statement that was an example to strengthen communication skills in 24th year students, facilitated 3MT presentations with feedback over 12 hours, resulting in 20 students reporting the experience was very helpful in their professional development. And so now you have your context, action, and results. And whenever you can quantify, you should quantify. So it's not to say that the more students you taught, it's better. It's just telling the employer what sort of experience you had. And then all these other things. Some people say, well, do I include if I was a coach for Little League Baseball? Well, that shows your leadership skills. So yes, if it shows any of the skills that the job is asking for, it doesn't have to be in science. If it shows a good CAR statement on how you took initiative and you were a leader, you're going to include them all in there. And then under that is education, which is 1 line per degree. Selected awards and publications. And if it's a technical position, you're going to have another section called pertinent skills. So the pertinent skills will include all of the technical things they're asking for, which could be flow cytometry, Python, C++, all the technical things. Proficiency in French, if they're asking for French. So that's where you're going to have pertinent skills under. Any questions about the resume?
Nana, maybe I'll ask a question. Oh, go ahead, Robin, please.
Oh, no, you go ahead. I have a question in the Q&A after, so go ahead.
No, sure. Yeah, I wanted to ask, how do you, seek advice about exactly how much of your skills you want to highlight? Because one thing I keep seeing now, my current role where I review 20-30 resumes a week for applicants, is people go a little overboard and then they lose really, what's tailored to the job. So what advice do you have about standing out even more?
Yeah, so I think the whole overboard thing is a common occurrence because some people may claim more than they've done, not because they're lying, it's just the way they word the CAR statement. So and the overboard is going to be different for each job. So if you're applying for an R&D position, they're going to know the jargon. So include the jargon. That's not overboard. But if you're applying for a basic communication role, they're not going to know all the different cell types and assays that you run. So you cannot include that language. So the overboard bit is a good question, is really gauging, okay, if someone is reading this application, my resume, from this company, what should they know because they're a scientist there, right? And then changing the language that way. Now, if this person is applying for a teaching position, then you're going to be including more curriculum development, pedagogy, all these student-centric language, and pull back a little bit on the jargon of the science. You kind of have to gauge what you're applying for.
Do you think that, this is a genuine question, I'm really curious, what do you think asking for actually a informational interview for somebody in the company could help? Or is that going a little too far? And what's your perception of that?
Yeah, so it depends again on the relationship of the person you have in the company. If they've been mentoring you for a couple of years and they know you, then you can even ask them, I'm going to submit my application in. Would it be okay for you to look at it, or would it be a conflict of interest? Just ask them straight up front and they'll tell you. Now, if you just met them last week, probably not. But again, it depends on the relationship. And Also, sometimes it's helpful to ask somebody outside of the company that you might have a mentorship relationship with and say, hey, you know, you're in medical affairs, maybe they're at Sanofi, but you're applying to GSK. So, you're in medical affairs. What does a typical medical affairs resume look like that would rise to the top? And they'll give you some general tips. So you kind of have to gauge your relationship with that person for sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to go on to cover letter.
Sorry, Nana, I'm just going to jump in with some questions first. And I guess I'm going to sneak in one of my own questions as I can at this point. But I'm just wondering when it's more appropriate to send your CV versus your resume, because I think there are a lot of settings, particularly in academia and research roles, where I can send either. And I know that in terms of time, it's probably easier to read that one-page summary, but you know, the CV kind of tells the full story of the academic background of everything. So when would it be better to send CV versus that one-page resume?
Yeah, so if the company or the organization is saying, please send a CV or a resume, I would send your CV, but I would include the CAR statements in the descriptors of your activities. So for example, if you're listing what you've done in your PhD, you have a paper written, and let's say from that paper or from your PhD, you optimized your protocol, and now the entire floor is using it. You haven't published it because it's not a published thing, but now everyone's using that protocol. You want to include that. You want to include that story. Or if you spearheaded your own collaboration, you found your own collaborators, you got the okay from your supervisor, but it's really your project, you want to include that as well. So all these stories should go under some of these items under your CV. Okay, especially if it's for a research and development role, I would send the CV.
Thank you. And I do have one really good question in the Q&A that says, is the objective section a mandatory section in that resume, especially when you're sending along a cover letter that does provide a lot of information about why you're applying and background as to why you might be good for that role? Are those redundant, and is it best to include both of those sections?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So if the company is asking for a resume but no cover letter, then definitely include the objective, because there's no other place to write that. If they're asking for a resume and a cover letter, it's totally up to you. But as an HR manager that has to screen 100 applicants a day, if you have the objective statement, that may be the clue to say, hey, I'm going to read their cover letter. So it doesn't hurt to add the extra 2 lines. I would include it either in all resumes. The only industry, like this is so some industries, they don't ask for that. For example, management consulting. If you're applying for a management consulting role, you don't need an objective statement. And that's just the way the industry works. A lot of banking roles, you don't need an objective statement. So this is something you may want to ask a mentor that's in that field, but most of the time I do see people with objective statement. But if you want to make a double check with whoever's in that field, then ask your mentor for sure. They will know.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so let's go on to sample cover letter. Okay. A sample cover letter. Your header at the sample cover letter should be the same as the header on your resume. So whatever font you used, whatever graphics designer, it should be the same so people can see that, oh, this is the same person. Business address of the hiring manager, the date, and addressing them as to your selection committee or to your hiring manager. If you know the person's name, bonus points for you. And since it's a business letter, you're using this colon and not a comma. So the old grammar rule that people have forgotten, but a business letter is actually a colon. And then here we have that opening statement is very close to your objective statements, such as the question that was just raised. My 5 years of biomedical research experience and 2 years of science communication and advocacy experience can fulfill your scientific editor position to help innovate the way that researchers share and digest new scientific discoveries. So One thing that's actually missing here, I would add, is the company's name at CellPress. So you want to include the company's name and why you're applying for that position and what you're bringing. So it's very similar to the objective statement. It could be a little bit longer. And then here, you could include the ID identifier, position, ID, whatever job number that was. And this is where you include it, so you're very specific to that. And what I want to point out is in a really good cover letter, it talks about what you're going to do for them. So you've already summarized in your CV and resume what you've done, what you've accomplished, all your meaningful engagements, all your prototypes, reflection, like all that is there on your CV resume. So this is the chance for you to write about what you hope to do for them. But if you're applying for a faculty position, you're going to be saying, here's the research I want to do for you at your institution, who I want to collaborate with. This is my research plan for the next 5 to 10 years. For you, if you're applying for something outside of academia, it's, well, how are you going to help them? So you want to do the research. So for example, here, this letter states, I'm interested in joining the team to provide a unique viewpoint on how researchers publish their data, and some of the ideas are written below. So for example, here, to help scientists to generate Figure 360 videos about their manuscripts. How do they know about Figure 360? You have to get onto their website, read their white papers, their publications, and figure out what this company is all about. Oh, there's this thing called Figure 360. I'm going to talk about it. The other thing they talk about is how they can, let's see, in addition to the tools that your team has already initiated with the transparent peer review process. So again, they've read about the transparent peer review process that this CellPress has all about. And then I can help potentially organize and run workshops. Okay, so it's about what you can do, what you bring to the table. And it's not about what you've already done. And here, thank you for your time and consideration. Please contact me. Always thank, always thank. Should you have any questions, here's my contact number. Okay, so any questions on the cover letter? Okay, so just kind of reframe on what you're offering them. That's what you want to be doing, is you want to reframe the cover letter to what you can offer them. Any other questions? Okay, so I want to
in the Q&A.
Okay, great. So I want to take the last couple of minutes to just go over, what is out there. So I know that most of you here are in the sciences, and some of you mostly in the life sciences. And this is an overview of the careers that are in the life sciences. So what I've circled in red is what we kind of already know about. Okay, so we've got discovery research, preclinical research, product development. We already know about that. There's a whole bunch of other things that you can be doing that you may not have known about. And some of these things may also come about when you're taking the individual development plan and science careers. So it's just good to know what other things exist, right? So medical affairs, marketing, corporate communications, business development, quality, management consulting, the law aspect of it all these things also exist in the business of science. Now I'm just going to put some careers up here in the screen. And I'm not going to go through them all. I just want to know if anyone wants to anything clarified or talk more about these careers, or if you've never heard of it. And you can write it in the chat. Everybody okay with that? We have one. Science translation is basically what it means, is translating science from one language to another. I mean, there's another thing as well, but that's usually what it is. And usually these jobs appear on LinkedIn. They'll say, we need somebody that knows French to translate this English science document. So grant writing services at each university, there's actually a grant writing office. Usually you have PhDs there that are really good with writing, and they'll help professors and other people write their grants, and that's their job. And you can find them at universities, at hospitals. So if you're a good writer, you could be involved in that. Process development scientist is basically, it's not here, Pio. Process development is basically developing sort of let's say you're manufacturing a bunch of a huge high throughput of vaccines. When did we do that? Is how do you scale up and how do you make that feasible? That's what you'll be involved with.
I put it up because it's something I wasn't aware of, and it seems it's a position that's highly, sought after in the industry, and not a lot of people go towards it.
Yeah, anytime there's like a process that has to be repeated and you want to develop that, or scaling up for millions and millions of vaccines, for example. Venture capitalist or venture capital, a VC is someone that says, hey, here's $1 million, I'm going to invest in your idea. But if you want to be involved in VC, the world, you can actually be involved in the business and join a venture capital firm as a junior associate to help with the business of science. Okay. All right. We'll go to the next slide. Anything here that you want to talk about or clarify? Yes, Dr. Fish makes a good point. For BSI, we can help you connect with some of these. Thing on here? Biodefense research. So depending on the country, some countries have within their military a bio department for biodefense. So for example, I was working on some projects with the military when I was in the States about biodefense. So how do we, for example, detect anthrax spores on male? So these were projects that, and even in Canada, they actually have a biodefense research opportunities once in a while. Anything else? Okay. Here's the last slide. If any questions on these careers. Hospital infection control is if you work in a hospital, what are the infection control procedures that the hospital has to take? And we just had, we're having a good example right now. What do we need to say on between patient rooms, between floors? How do we make sure that the infection stays within the patient and even with the public? So many of those programs, actually, the hospital infection control, there's a training program to it. But if you're in undergraduate in science, a graduate degree in sciences, you can find these people actually just, through the network. How do I get myself involved? I have seen some PhDs get involved with hospital infection control. It's not common, but it does exist. So just to reiterate, your career may not even be on here. You might be creating your own career from your own country in your own way. So if you're going to take anything away from this workshop, is to know that if you have the drive and you care about something, you're good at something, and you find that niche, whatever country you're in, and you reach out to people from other countries and how they did it in other countries, then you can find a way, find the stakeholders, find the people that are involved, find people that can support you. And your action plans during school. You're going to be doing well, hopefully, with your publications and your courses, and continuously grow by using the individual development plan and asking for help, mentors. Attend conferences just like you're doing right now. Good job at attending. Ask for informational interviews. Actually surf as opposed to asking about surfing. So you actually have to do this stuff, right? As opposed to just reading about it or asking about it. And then measure impact. Measure impact. If you're teaching, ask for feedback. If you are presenting, ask for feedback so that you can process your own development and also write this on your resume. And also include the equity, diversity, inclusion lens in everything that you do. Learning from multiple perspectives, we will understand our world better. And remember, we've got one home, so take care of that. So no matter what you do, hopefully you make a green footprint. For those of you that are interested, in May of 2022, we have a Life Science Career Expo that's at lsce.ca. It's for 1 week. It's all virtual, and we can have it's a set of career talks and career panels about various careers. Right? I also have a book that's coming out in 2023 called Success After Graduate School, and it's a second edition. And I would like to thank the SI for your invitation, and I will take any questions, and I'm going to provide a feedback link in the chat for everyone to fill out. And if you have any more questions I didn't get to, please put it in the Google Sheet that we had just been working on, and I will get to that within a day. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Lee. We really appreciate you being here, and that was a wonderful talk. I'm keeping my eye on the Q&A and on the chat, and I don't see anything. I think we had a lot of really great opportunities to go through questions during that really engaging talk, but I will leave that form that Nana has just put in the chat as well, and Q&A will continue to be monitored. So I will, with that, pass off to the next session. So thanks again. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Bye.